Today on the 01581, an update from the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust. Hi, and welcome to the 01581 Let's Talk. I'm so excited to bring this topic before you. One of the things that I committed to doing this year in the show was to talk about things that matter to our community, and two topics that are very relevant, and not just to Westborough, but also here in the Commonwealth, is the lack of housing stock. And we touched on that in an earlier show when we had our guests, Jenny Gingras and Mark Silverberg, on talking about the MBTA Communities Initiative. Today, we're going to pivot a little bit, still talking about housing, but talking about affordability, which I know certainly as I travel throughout the town, it's a topic that is near and dear to everyone's hearts and minds and wallets, no matter their age. And who better to join me today than my colleague on the board, Allen Edinberg. Alan's a member of the select board. He is the select board's representative to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, and he was sort of the founder, in my mind, of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust. Really pushed to all of us to understand the issue and think about how we could create this trust, and why it was important to Westborough. So, Alan, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so Alan and I are gonna talk about the trust, what's going on with the trust, some current projects. Also give a refresher as to the mission of the trust, because some folks watching this may be like, we have a trust, what is that? How does it work? And we'll just kind of let the conversation flow from there. Alan is the dedicated guest today. So our town manager is handling Blizzard related duties and budget topics. So it's just me and Alan today. So with that, Alan, if you would please just give us a refresher of what the mission is of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah, let me pull up a couple slides here. We'll just sort of go through who we are and what we do. So the mission of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust is to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing units in Westborough for the benefit of low and moderate income households, and to support efforts that improve housing affordability for our community in general. And so it's a pretty broad scope. So we often talk about affordable housing with the capital A and the capital H being a very specific defined type of housing. But we also talk a lot about housing affordability. Can people afford to own and rent, whether it's affordable housing or market rate housing? So the work we do since our inception really follows a set of guiding principles that are up on the screen. And these really are geared towards helping guide the trust in our actions as far as setting priorities and the type of work we do. So obviously we want to help the town stay above the required thresholds of affordable housing as a percentage of our housing inventory, so that we don't lose control over zoning, because we want affordable housing and all housing to fit well within our community. And we're also very committed to doing work based on the guidance we get from the master plan, from studies like the senior assessment that was recently completed, as well as data around demographics, housing, and documented need.
Alan, so, if you would just remind our viewers, what is that threshold for affordable housing before a 40B project would be permitted?
It's 10%. Okay. So 10% of the housing stock needs to be counted as affordable, which doesn't necessarily mean that 10% of the housing stock is affordable. It's a complex formula.
Right. And it used to be DHCD. Remind our viewers what the new entity is that's overseeing that.
So the former Department of Housing and Community Development was renamed to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. It's quite the tongue twister. EOHLC, we often just refer to it now as HLC.
HLC. Okay, so if our viewers are hearing that during the presentation at any point, that's what it's referring to. Great, thank you.
And the other term you might hear me say is SHI, which is the subsidized housing inventory for the town. And that is the number of housing units that the state is counting as affordable housing.
Okay. And is it possible, Alan, that that the town could have affordable housing that wouldn't be counted in the SHI? Whether it be present or future, can those two things exist simultaneously, or is it kind of all affordable housing is counted within the SHI?
So not all, if you use the broad view of affordable housing, not all affordable housing is counted as SHI. Subsidized housing inventory, those units need to meet very specific requirements. If they're for ownership, as far as who's allowed to buy them and the price that's that they can be bought and sold for is managed by the state and a set of formulas. Similarly, if it's a rental unit, a subsidized housing inventory will have rents that the maximum based on the number of bedrooms is set actually by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for every single community in the country. And so Westborough has its HUD set rent rates. Those units also have stipulations on who can rent or buy as far as income level, assets, and some other restrictions.
Okay. Okay, great. And so go ahead. We kind of jumped in here into the guiding principles. What you mentioned here about the some of the guiding principles, that being kind of respecting and reflecting the architecture styles and neighborhoods. How would the housing trust kind of look at that and go about that? Can you give an example?
Well, so for example, we have a project on 3 Baylor Avenue. It's a single family home. The owner passed away. It took the state 3 years to determine there were no heirs to the estate. Wow. At which time the town was able to start the taking process for unpaid taxes. And so the home's been vacant since 2015. The town acquired it in early 2020, I believe, and it came to the trust after the tax title taking process was finished.
And this is one of the first, right? This is like
this is our first. This is our first project, and it's been quite the adventure, actually. So when we put that property out to bid for a developer, the home was in bad shape, full of asbestos and lead. So it's a tear down and rebuild. When we put the proposal out to developers, we specifically included requirements that the design of whatever replaces it fit within the neighborhood. So for example, there was one developer who ended up not bidding because they wanted to do a 2.5-story home.
Got it.
And most of those homes are 1 story or have had additions built that give them a 2nd story. So we don't want something that's tall and looming. The home that's going to be built fits within the size of the existing footprint, slightly different shape, but the same number of square feet. So it won't oversize the yard and things of that nature. And then architecturally, they're including elements that you will see on other buildings in the neighborhood from a look and feel.
Okay, great. Excellent. Excellent. So, so that gives a segue to what other projects is the trust working on? And can you give us an update on that? Baylor Ave is one, just for reference, is one over by Lake Chauncey.
Yes.
For the neighborhood. What else is the trust working on?
So we've got a number of other active projects. The trust acquired through a bankruptcy auction acquired a 1.2 acre lot at 6 Beach Street. And we're currently evaluating, there's currently a 4-bedroom house on that property, and we're currently evaluating our redevelopment options. And again, that property is part of the Vintonville Historic District. So whatever we do will meet the historic characteristics of that neighborhood. Which, interestingly enough, the reason that's a historic district is because it's one of the first neighborhoods that in the country that was built specifically for workforce housing to provide affordable housing to the factory
Interesting.
workers
Wow.
who are working in the mills. And so the architectural element that makes it historic is the lack of architectural elements,
Oh,
because it
interesting.
borders our downtown historic district,
Yep.
where part of the charm of downtown is some fanciness,
Sure.
and some ornamentation on the architecture of the homes.
Yep.
These homes were plain, simple cottages
Yep.
designed to be affordable and functional for working families. And so as we go through the design process there, we'll fit into that neighborhood, quite well.
Sure.
And then there's a project that
Alan, can I go back to when you use the term working families, can you elaborate on what that means for the trust as you're thinking about projects? Because, I think I know there are misconceptions about affordability, and then we talk about working, and then we talk about senior kind of housing may not be working, maybe they are working. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So again, affordable housing with the capital A really starts when someone's household income is at 80% of the median income for our area. And that scales based on the number of people in the household. And so for a family of four, the area median income for Westborough is about, the numbers get updated next month, but it's about $120,000. Okay. And so 80% of that is where you start saying housing that's affordable to someone who makes 80% of that is affordable housing. And the rule of thumb is that housing is affordable to a household if the cost of housing doesn't exceed 30% of the household income.
So 30% of 80%, and the housing costs are inclusive of everything housing related, right? So
it's for ownership, it's mortgage and insurance.
Mm-hmm.
For when you look at rental properties, it's rent and utilities.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And so,
go ahead.
So when we talk about workforce housing, we're generally talking about housing that's affordable to people between that 80% AMI threshold and 120%.
Okay.
And it's sort of the middle. It's and that can be families, it can be individuals, it can be seniors who are looking to downsize. Mm-hmm. It all comes into play.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So you were starting to talk about the Beach Street property, working neighborhood, working class kind of neighborhood, so to speak, and housing and affordability. Anything else on the Beach Street property?
That's it. At this point, it relates to one of our two warrant articles that the trust is sponsoring for town meeting, and I can get into that if you'd like. The other property that relates to both the warrant articles is 45 High Street Extension. Okay. This is a 0.7 acre lot that the town has owned since 1939. It appears at some point in its history was used as a gravel pit, where gravel was mined. So, it looks like a nice lot. In the middle, there's actually a significantly deep hole that no matter what happens needs to be filled. And because it's a hole, it collects water. There are now, the bottom of the hole is considered a wetland. Oh, wow. And so if you're going to fill the hole, you have to do restorative wetland work on the property as well. We're looking at that property, and one of our town meeting warrant articles is to allow the select board to transfer that property to the trust. Okay. The select board previously gave us permission to evaluate the property to see if it's buildable. We believe it is. But in order to move forward now to explore engineering and design work and go before all the committees we would need to for permitting, as well as to start arranging financing for the project, we need to have control of the property. And so the warrant article to transfer it is asking the select board to transfer it to the trust, but still giving the select board to recall the property if they want. And the select board would have the authority under this article to recall the property if the trust doesn't obtain permits within a certain period of time that the select board defines. So let's say 18 months, or if before we have a permitted project, the select board identifies a different municipal or public use for the property. And
What
so
is what's the history of the town owning this particular piece of land? Was it for the town's kind of gravel use, or was it a property that we acquired at some point through a, taking?
we're not sure.
Okay.
We haven't gone into the microfiche records to see if they're there.
Okay.
And we're not sure if the gravel pit was before or after the town acquired the property. It could very well have been acquired for the gravel and to create some drainage in that area. But we're not totally sure.
And what would the plans be for this particular property?
Well,
have you
let me
contemplated that?
pull up a screen here.
Okay.
And so here are two pictures. On the left-hand side is from our online GIS system. It sort of outlines the property. High Street Extension is the street that goes up and makes the left turn. To the right, you see the townhomes on Mayberry Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see in this picture where, the red hash marks are wetlands that need to be managed. The picture on the right is a conceptual drawing. These are 1,200 square foot two-bedroom, two-bath cottages that have, kitchen, living room area, open floor plan, storage space, designed to be built on slab. So we don't need foundation work. And you can see it's a layout for the property that provides a central parking lot, four of these small units, and then shared open space and green space around. And if you look,
sorry, go ahead.
And if you look in the upper right, you see, those hash marks that seem to be hand drawn. That's where we would do the restorative work to the wetlands that we'd be filling in the middle.
Okay.
And so this is
I do see in here that I do see you have septic. So I wanted to touch on this a little bit when we were talking about Beach Street, but also here. So there has to be a lot of collaborative work with the trust that there needs to be conformity with whatever the town requires, whether it's septic or the ability to tie in, if that's part of the land or not part of the land. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the trust is effectively a real estate development investment trust. So as a project owner or manager, we need to follow the same rules as any other any other public or private developer would need to as well. And so this plan has septic in it. We believe that, and it's still being investigated, that this property has an allocation for town sewer. And there's town sewer nearby, but we don't believe that allocation is enough for 8 bedrooms. Right. And so whether or not 1 or 2 units could be hooked to town sewer and the other have to go on septic or not, we'll plan to do septic. It adds cost to the project, so we build it into the finances. Sure. If it turns out we don't need it, that's great. We can pull it out, right? Sure. It's always easy. It's always easier to make the project less expensive than after you start, then more expensive. And similarly for Beach Street.
I think what we're seeing here on this project is I'm going to use the word a housing density aligned with that would be not kind of typical for Westborough, not typical for many communities, but profiles of homes that kind of align with the neighborhood and aren't kind of intrusive to it, if you will.
Correct. We're trying to fit within the neighborhood with the style of home, the look and the feel, the size. Yep. This cottage style of concept is a very efficient way to fill in affordable housing and workforce housing without, getting into building multi-story, multi-unit buildings. Right. In a feel, it's from a design and a layout standpoint, it's transitional because you have on one side, on some sides of the property, you have single family homes or homesteads with multiple buildings. And on the other side, you do have townhomes. Yep. And so these aren't townhomes, right? They're not that sort of look and feel. They are single family homes, but smaller and back from the road. Sure. We had a different design that had a little more green space in it, but feedback from the fire department is it would be too difficult for an ambulance to back in or back out. Okay. And so the parking lot gives the ambulance turnaround room.
Alan, I'm curious, with with these, when the trust, so if the trust, things move forward as you would hope, and then this goes out to bid with a developer, does the trust dictate, or is it up to the developer to bid it as homes for sale versus something that would be kind of, rentals?
It's actually up to the trust to decide
Okay.
how we want to develop the product. So
Okay.
right now we're helping fund the town's housing production plan for the town. We're partnering with the planning board and the planning department on that.
Mhm.
And that will give us updated data about needs. We also have data from the senior needs assessment
Yep.
about the need for downsize opportunities, both ownership and rental.
Okay.
So at this point, we have not made a final decision
Okay.
on whether these would be for ownership or whether we would have them built under contract and then have a company manage them or have the housing authority manage them as rental units.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And they're different values. Our goal, we expect that some of these units will be earmarked for seniors and some will be earmarked for families. We've asked for data around veterans as well.
Excellent.
To see if we need more veteran preference units in Westborough at this point.
Excellent. So this will be related to, this project is related, as you said, to two different articles at town meeting.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so the one is the transfer of 45 High Street.
Mhm.
The other is a home rule petition to exempt the trust for High Street extension and the 6 Beach Street projects, or if we combine them into one project, from certain aspects of state procurement rules. Okay, and this is a technical move. And so for the policy buffs out there, this is where you get into the weeds a little bit. But effectively, Chapter 149 is most commonly known as the prevailing wage law. It sets guidelines for wages for workers on government projects, as well as requirements for how subcontracting work is distributed. It also has a whole set of rules about the bidding process that add time and cost to government projects. So this is one of those situations where when people stand up at town meeting, it's like, why does this renovation cost so more when the government does it than when my uncle did it in his office building or for his home? Section 149 is one of several reasons. And those rules were put in to prevent graft and corruption and people stealing taxpayer money by not doing projects the way they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. So what we're asking for, and I won't read the article, it'll get read on town floor. It's long, it's detailed. We don't
have time for that.
Yeah, it's written by lawyers, right? But effectively, we're looking for exemptions from part of the government procurement process to simplify the procurement process as far as the number of steps we need to take and reducing the need for what's known as filed subcontractor bids.
Yeah.
On a government project, the general contractor needs to go out to bid to multiple companies and document that for every single subcontract on the project.
Yeah, we saw that on the Fails project. As a member of that building committee, that term resonates from that project.
And recently, the school department had a bid that they couldn't honor because one of the subcontractors never filed. Right? They didn't do the pre-files. Right. So it forces the contractor to go through a very expensive, time-consuming bid process, as opposed to saying, "Hey, general contractor, oh yeah, I've got 3 electricians I always work with.
Yep.
I'll hire one of them for the project." They have to go out to public bid.
Right.
This does not exempt the project from the prevailing wage, so it's not going to impact how much people earn who work on the project or the contractor preference provisions under state law. So those are still protected. What it does do is it lowers the cost of the project and therefore makes the project eligible for low-income tax credits. So if we partner with a developer on this, the developer can take those tax credits, which total 13% between federal and state, can reduce the project cost by 13%. And we're asking for this now because home rule petitions can take 6 to 9 months to make it through the select board and then the legislature.
Yeah.
And this will give us this approval by the time we're ready to secure financing.
Excellent.
And hopefully put the project out to bid having permits. And so it effectively will cut about a year of time off the project if we do this now rather than wait until we're
Fantastic.
permitted.
Well, yet another example of the great work that the trust is doing, really thinking about not just the project and getting excited about that, which is pretty natural if you're sitting on that trust and you're committed to that work, but also really thinking about how do we, how do we reduce the hurdles to these, what is a very complex process. I know you and I have talked about that and you've shared that with the select board many times. The home rule petition, can you just talk about that? So if we pass it at town meeting, is that a majority or 2/3 vote? I don't recall.
I believe it's a majority vote.
Majority, okay. And then it does have to go before the state legislature for approval. So we'd be looking for our representative and senator.
Right. So first it goes to the select board.
Yep.
So what we're
right.
asking to do, we're asking the select board to submit the home rule petition.
Okay.
On behalf of the town. And then it goes through the state legislature. As an example, in an October town meeting, there was a home rule petition for a charter change that would let the select board ask the housing trust to provide the housing partnership committee.
Yep.
That has moved very quickly through the process, I've been told. So it was submitted and it's now had its third reading, but it's not yet scheduled when it's going to go to the floor of the House for the vote. And then it's got to go through the House, the Senate, and then to the governor's desk. And so we're the end of, that was mid-October, we're the end of February.
Yeah.
It's already 4 months. We're probably another 2 months out, and that was fast tracked. And so we'll see where, this could take 6 to 9 months to make it through the process.
Has the trust seen where this chapter 149 and the home rule petition has been done in other communities that there might be success you can lean on?
Yes, actually, this is a fairly common mechanism that are used by housing authorities. Most for their projects, most recently, the town of Acton and the Acton Housing Authority did a nearly identical request. For a project they have that they're building 40 single-family cottage-style homes on a piece of town land that will be rental units. And, they were successful in getting this passed at town meeting and through the legislature fairly quickly.
Sure. So speaking of town meeting, there is a citizens petition that has that will be on the warrant, or is on the warrant, I should say, that touches into affordable housing. Would you like to comment on that here?
Yeah, sure. So let me share what it is. I'm going to share the wording of the warning of the actual warrant article, but not the petitioner's commentary. Okay. That he gets to present as well. The trust, we actually discussed this at our meeting last week. We find the wording insulting to the volunteers involved in the work of affordable housing and the other boards and committees that are involved. Definitely insulting to certain neighborhoods, the people currently in affordable housing, neighborhoods, I think just town residents in general. That said, the wording is to see if the town will support a resolution that all new affordable housing units in Westborough be located equally throughout the entire town. The trustees discussed it, and we agree with the spirit of the article. Whether it's the spirit of the petitioner or not sure. But yes, affordable housing should be spread throughout the community. In fact, there are studies that show that communities are healthier and even property values are more stable and better when affordable housing is integrated throughout an entire community and not just concentrated in large centralized developments. And that's part of our mission as well, is to provide a variety. We appreciate, so while the trust appreciates the spirit of this article, we disagree with the wording. And the real problem is the word equal, because that's not something that's practical or attainable, right? We want affordable housing in every neighborhood. But we need to worry about the equity of affordable housing. And there are a couple of considerations there. One, people who need affordable housing are doing so because they have limited income. So they are often, for example, transportation poor. They may not have a car at all, or may only have one car for a two-parent working family. And so being proximate to being able to walk or easily bicycle year round to shopping and other services.
Mhm.
We have access to public transportation to get to and from appointments and work. And note that for example, our VIA service doesn't cover the entire town of Westborough
Right,
yet.
right, yes,
Pushing.
right.
Yeah, right. So you need that. You need housing located where it best serves the needs of the people. That doesn't mean you don't put affordable housing, in single family neighborhoods with 1.5 acre or 1 acre minimum lot sizes that we have around town, because that affordable housing will meet the needs of different families.
Mhm.
Right. And we've seen that. We have affordable housing off of East Main Street and single family homes. We've got single family home affordable housing off of Grove and Fisher Street. And there are other land that, as it gets developed, affordable housing will be included.
Mhm.
And so the trust wants to develop affordable housing throughout the community, but also relative to the needs
Mhm.
of those who are going to benefit from it.
Sure.
The other side of that is we also have a fiscal responsibility, right, to the town. We are trustees. We're managing a trust. And so we're best suited to use our funding to leverage other sources of funding and subsidy to get the affordable homes built throughout the community. And so the cost. So for example, we've looked at a couple of properties that became available where the town actually had first rights of refusal because they were coming off of an agricultural exemption.
Yep.
We looked at a single family lot that we thought we could build a duplex or a triplex on. But there's a state agency that determines how much the buyer has to pay to remove the agricultural restriction. So when we looked at the cost of the land alone, and knowing that it had already failed a Title V inspection, so it would require groundwork to get septic in,
Mhm.
the cost of this one single family home, just the land was going to, and prep for septic was going to be $1 million to $1.2 million. Right. And so even with subsidies, even with tax credits, the cost of acquiring that land and then putting it out for development,
Yeah. Just
we
can't
could
make
have
the
done
numbers
it,
work. Right,
but it would have been so much of the trust's funds
right.
where if I can work with, if we can work with a developer to add one additional unit or,
Sure.
a cottage style development,
Mhm.
that same amount of money can result in 4, 6, 8, 10 units.
Sure.
And so we have to be practical about how we do it.
Sure.
And so we would prefer that this citizens petition talked about equitably
Mhm.
throughout the town, and we'll see how that plays out at town meeting.
Sure. So just you mentioned kind of as you're looking at projects, correct to say that the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust also follows the work of the planning board, and as projects are coming forward where appropriate, the Affordable Housing Trust is providing letters of support or comment or feedback to that process?
Yeah, and so and that's part of the reason why we wanted to be able to facilitate the Housing Partnership Committee.
Mhm.
So trustees have met with private developers who are at the concept stage of what they're looking to do.
Yep.
And we've talked about, and I want to step aside and say, Westborough has excellent inclusionary zoning, by the way.
Okay.
So when we talk about affordable housing everywhere, I want to say it was passed, I have to go back and look, I think it was 2019 at town meeting, we passed inclusionary zoning that said every single residential development in town needs at least 10% affordable housing units certified by the state as SHI.
Yep.
But starting with the 5th unit. And so unit number 5 is affordable. And because you have to, the code says you have to round up, unit number 11 is affordable.
Mhm.
So no matter where residential housing is built in town, you will have between 10 and 20% as far as affordable restricted units. For our overlay districts, the downtown business overlay, that was the downtown planning overlay district or the BPOD and the senior overlay districts, the requirement is 20%.
Right.
And so we've got very good inclusionary zoning. We have to follow those rules. The trust needs to follow the rules and the zoning that's going to come out of the MBTA communities work that committee and the planning board are doing. And that's on town meeting, that's on the warrant articles as well. Additionally, it was made very clear to us when we were created, and even through the extensive involvement in the community in the master plan, that we should follow the guidance of the master plan. And the town has a vision for how and where they want different types of housing development. We should build those types of housing in those areas.
Sure.
Even if those units themselves are affordable.
Got it. Okay. So in the minute or two here we have left, anything else you want to update viewers on as it relates to the work of the trust? And
Sure.
Okay.
You'll notice the town meeting of the budget.
Yep.
That the Housing Trust has agreed to cover 11 hours a week for a new position in the town, an assistant town planner. That'll give the trust some staff resources, and more importantly, ensure that the institutional knowledge that we're building doesn't disappear as volunteers come on and off our board. We're working on and will be launching a program we're calling Homeborough. It is a down payment assistance program that will provide grants, no interest loans and forgivable no interest loans, depending on qualification, to families looking to move into either affordable or market rate homes. It'll be open to current and recent residents of Westborough, as well as town employees. And so it'll be an option for people who want to live in town, to stay in town. And that program's eligible for first-time home buyers as well as seniors. And so it can help with downsizing as well.
Excellent.
Today, the trust is we were invited to apply for a grant from the TD Bank Charitable Foundation. They have a Housing for Everyone grant. This would be to launch a rental assistance program to help people who are moving into their first apartment, need transitional assistance until other rental assistance programs kick in or approvals happen. State programs can take 60 to 90 days for the paperwork to flow. We can help in that interim, as well as households facing rent increases that they can't afford that would force them out. And so it's eviction prevention as well. And we are in the early phases of exploring a home repair program. The Council on Aging and the Senior Center have a handyman service that can do minor repairs. This is a program that could provide grants and other funding for larger repairs. So
Very excited about that one. I'm
stay in
excited
your
about
home,
all of it, but this is good.
Yeah, and so that's a little further down the road. So
Great.
These projects, aside from our development work, these projects are part of that mission of improving overall housing affordability in town and helping people have that housing security.
Excellent. Well, Alan, I want to thank you for coming on today as a guest. Through you, please extend my thanks to the work of the Affordable Housing Trust. I know that I don't know if you want to give a quick shout out to the members on that amazing board and committee.
Sure, I do. Ed Bain is our chair, does a fabulous job, leading us. Hank Rausch, who has more than 2 decades of experience with Habitat for Humanity and doing affordable housing projects, is our vice chair. Kate Storm, many people know her through Westborough Connects, and she's been on the Youth Commission as well. She is professionally a social worker and brings a very human element to the work we do. Ken Salzman joined us over a year ago. He is a contractor and developer and understands all things construction and zoning. New members, Steve Herrera, who's relatively new to town and went through the Citizen Leadership Academy, sees this as a way that he can apply his skills to make our community better. And he's actually our representative for the housing production plan. Awesome. And so that's off and running. And Sarah Rundell, who is legal counsel within Eastern Bank, who works on housing and loans from the other side, has joined us recently as well. And so we've got a great team of committed volunteers. Yeah,
you got a great mixed skill set and interest. So thanks to everyone there. Thanks for giving them shout outs for their work. And I hope that you or another member of the trust will come back on as your work progresses. You're welcome anytime. I think this is a vitally important topic for Westborough to continue to understand, for our residents to continue to understand what the projects are, how the trust is approaching it, how this fits into, our master plan, as well as the spirit of the community that we call Westborough. So, Alan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Westborough TV, for hosting and taping our show here. And I wish all of you well. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time on the show.
Apparently, oh, my cat.
What happened?
My cat.
Oh, hi. What's her name or his name?
It's Milo. He's
Hi, Milo. Hi. Hi.